The St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is in full swing. Business leaders and policymakers from almost 90 countries around the world are attending, including the chief executive of the $10 billion Russian direct investment fund. Kirill Dmitriev has been at the helm since it was set up by the government last year. Its mission, make money from equity investments, mainly in the local economy. But this month, Dmitriev branched out, striking a deal with China for a joint fund worth up to $4 billion. You can see why he was picked to run the fund. He came straight over from a leading private equity firm in the region. He built up lots of business experience at McKinsey and Goldman Sachs as well. And Dmitriev is joined by our very own Ryan Chilcote in St. Petersburg. And Ryan, the Russian direct investment fund has just struck a deal with BlackRock and others to invest in local firms preparing to go public.
That's right. It's white nights in Russia, in St. Petersburg right now. The sun set at about 4 in the morning, and Kirill Dmitriev was out there the whole night wooing investors.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us, Kirill. Look, walk us through this deal that you did yesterday. The whole idea is to incentivize investment in companies that are going to list in Russia. That's it?
Yeah, exactly. So we have a consortium of a couple of leading investors in the world. It's BlackRock, it's Templeton, it's Goldman Sachs, and us, who are going to invest in some companies in Russia pre-IPO. And the only condition would be that those companies need then to go public on the Russian exchange. And we see a huge number of opportunities in that space.
You're looking at for companies that would have a valuation of an IPO valuation of about $100 million. Is that right?
Well, I think our investment is going to be around $100 million, and actually in each given company, something like that.
And that would be for like a 2-3% stake in these companies?
No, I think we'll try to go maybe for a little bit larger stake, but the idea is not to obviously have a very large stake. It's going to be a pre-IPO investment at a discount to future IPO price.
What kind of discount? 30%?
Well, I think we don't want to go into specific numbers, but you know, it's going to be a good return over the next couple of years before the IPO.
So $100 million, that means that your fund puts up 50, and then between these three other, BlackRock, Goldman,
or we could put a little bit less.
Would...
Or we could put a little bit less. I think we'll do it each deal individually. So it's basically a consortium that will decide on a case-by-case basis.
Sounds like a good idea, but these companies, they haven't actually committed any money yet, have they?
Well, no, but they have lots of money under management and they're committed to doing deals in Russia. Now, the fund that has committed yesterday, which is the second big news, is Kuwait Investment Authority, because they committed $500 million, yes, to co-invest automatically in all of the deals that Russia Direct Investment Fund is going to do.
Let's go back to the pre-IPO thing. I just want to, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? I mean, there's only been one IPO so far this year in Moscow.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we believe there is a huge opportunity, because if you look at capital markets, you know, they're not very good for IPOs right now, and we also don't want to, you know, assume that the markets are going to improve very quickly. So we are going to look at some opportunities, and basically if IPO happens, great. If not, we'll ask to basically that investment would be converted at a pretty low valuation.
Why is it that Russian companies always IPO in London and New York and not Moscow?
Well, there is, at this point, quite a bit more liquidity in London, so this is something we want to improve and have more liquidity in Moscow. But also, I think for many investors, just the exchange in London seems to be quicker, faster, but there are lots of great things happening in the Russian exchange. It's improving new technology, so we believe it's going to be a big player going forward. Russian exchange will.
Talk me through this. I mean, the whole idea is obviously to stem the capital outflows. $350 billion have come out of Russia since 2007. Realistically, do you think, how long do you think it might take to turn that around, to get capital flowing into Russia?
Yeah, I think it may take a couple of years, but what's important is that the government has taken very practical, concrete steps. So President Putin had a great speech yesterday. He talked about moving Russia from 120th place on ease of doing business to 20th place, and government has 22 specific roadmaps in all sorts of things, improving governance, improving customs. So we believe it will take some time, but it's not going to be, you know, 5 or 6 years. It's a question of a couple of years. Also, direct investment in Russia actually increased. So foreign direct investment went to 53 billion from 40 billion in just 1 year, 21% increase.
Investors are obviously going to be watching where you put your money, what kind of companies are you looking at?
We're looking at growth companies that are growing quite fast. I keep on mentioning that the middle class in Russia tripled in the last 5 years, and that gives lots of opportunity for people to invest.
And give me a sense of what kind, because obviously when people think of Russia, they think of commodities. Is that the idea?
No, I think we're going to go very much for a diversified approach and look at different sectors. And Ryan, you know a little bit about Russia Direct Investment Fund because he was the first one to hear this news from President Medvedev. He was the first one to report on it. So it's a very diversified approach. We want to diversify economy, look at all sorts of sectors in the economy.
Also, can you give me a little bit more specific sense?
Logistics, agriculture, energy efficiency, healthcare. Private healthcare is a great example, starting from very small base because during Soviet times it was all public, increasing dramatically fast because middle class is increasing.
What would you say to the people out there, the skeptics, that will say, well, this is a great deal for BlackRock, for Goldman Sachs, because this is, they're the guilted ones in this, aren't they? They've been selected to have, to work with the government to create a positive image of the investment climate. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if you're an investor coming in outside of this deal and this bubble with you, that you're going to have just as good of an experience.
Well, I think government is definitely increasing transparency and improving lots of things. But we want also to have a fast track. And what Russia Direct Investment Fund provides is a partnership with government money to have fast track on some initiatives, but that's an open fast track. So we are open to other funds to work with us. Yesterday we had a great meeting with President Putin where $5 trillion of investors were sitting around the table, all quite keen to think about opportunities in Russia.
Kirill Dmitriev, thank you very much. I'm going to toss it back to you. We'll have more throughout the day here at the second day of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum.
Ryan, thanks. We'll speak to you.